The Apache attack helicopter is now conducting strikes inside Iranian airspace. CENTCOM has confirmed multiple AH-64E engagements along the Strait of Hormuz coastline in the third week of March. These are the first confirmed helicopter attack missions since the campaign began. It is not fast, does not fly high, and is not stealthy. Yet it is operating with remarkable ease. It is the slowest combat aircraft the United States possesses, and also one of the loudest. It has no radar cross-section reduction by design, no radar-absorbing coating, and almost no real way to hide. For 40 years, Iran has spent billions of dollars building an air defense network that, in theory, should have been designed to neutralize exactly this kind of target. From the S-300 PMU-2 and Bavar-373 to the Khordad-15, everything was layered, overlapping, and built as a blend of Russian technology and domestic capability to lock down the skies against anything that flies. But the Apache is not being shot down. It is not even being forced to evade. It is hunting. And if a non-stealth helicopter with a top speed of only 164 knots can still operate freely over Iran, what does that say about the entire air defense system Iran spent 4 decades and billions of dollars building? The answer does not lie in the helicopter itself, but in the equation behind it. That equation begins with what the Apache willingly gave up, and it gave up almost everything. Every combat aircraft survives by trading one form of energy for another form of survivability: speed, altitude, or stealth. The F-35 trades fuel and design freedom for a radar cross-section reduced to a tiny fraction of a square meter. The B-1B trades wing geometry for intercontinental penetration range. Every platform in the sky must choose its compromises, then live or die by what it gains in return. The Apache chose to surrender almost all of it. At a cruising speed of about 145 knots, the Apache crosses a surface-to-air missile kill zone the way a pedestrian walks through a minefield. An F-35 flashes through a danger area in seconds. An Apache has to remain there for minutes. It cannot outrun a missile, and it cannot outrun radar tracking. At that speed, an engagement is no longer a contest of wits. It becomes a countdown to destruction. Nor can the Apache climb out of danger. Its service ceiling is about 20,000 feet, while the S-300 PMU-2 can engage targets at roughly 88,000 feet. The Apache's entire flight envelope, from terrain-hugging flight at 200 feet to observation at several thousand feet, sits comfortably inside the lowest portion of the S-300's engagement envelope. There is no altitude at which it is safe. And there is no real way for it to hide. Radar works by measuring shifts in the reflected signal's frequency, the Doppler effect. Ground vehicles create one kind of signal based on their speed. Fixed-wing aircraft create another, plus minor vibrations. But helicopter rotor blades generate a signature almost nothing else on Earth can produce. A 48-foot rotor disc creates a situation in which one blade tip is moving toward the radar while the other is moving away from it at the same time. The result is a highly distinctive dual-frequency return so recognizable that radar crews call it helicopter flash. No rock, no truck, no piece of terrain can produce the same effect. Even the most advanced ground clutter filters cannot remove it because it does not resemble anything else. Fixed-wing aircraft can sometimes blend into terrain returns. Helicopters cannot. Their rotor blades betray them on every radar sweep. Even the Apache's heat signature is hard to conceal. Its twin turboshaft engines continuously generate roughly 4,000 shaft horsepower, pushing hot exhaust into the sky. The black hole infrared suppression system can reduce the thermal signature, but it cannot erase it. An infrared-guided manpads can still detect an Apache from miles away. That is the helicopter's energy state when it enters combat. It gives up speed, altitude, and discretion, the very things that usually keep aircraft alive, in exchange for the ability to hover, stop, and hide behind terrain. In any environment where the enemy still has radar-guided air defenses, that trade-off is nearly suicidal. The Apache gives a surface-to-air missile system every advantage it needs to kill it. That makes the survival equation brutally simple. If even one radar-guided SAM battery is still functioning, the Apache is effectively out of options. Not badly damaged, not merely at high risk, almost certainly dead. There is no gray area, no acceptable attrition rate, and no worthwhile gamble. Either the helicopter operates in an environment where the threat has been reduced to almost nothing, or it should not take off at all. To understand why the Apache is still flying, you have to look at the difference between C-AID and D-AID. C-AID means suppression of enemy air defenses. It is temporary. You jam the radar and the missile system goes quiet. You stop jamming and it wakes back up. C-AID creates a short-lived gap. Dead means destruction of enemy air defenses. It creates a graveyard. Fast jets can operate under the cover of C-AID because they only pass through the danger zone for a few seconds. Helicopters do not have that privilege. They have to stay for minutes, not seconds. For a helicopter, suppression is not enough. The threat has to be destroyed. The launchers and radars have to become twisted scrap metal, not just fall silent for a moment. The fact that Apaches, not just F-35s or B-1Bs, are now operating freely over Iran shows that this is no longer C-AID. This is dead. Iran's radar-guided air defense network was not merely suppressed, it was dismantled piece by piece. Once that threat disappears, the Apache reveals why it is so dangerous. Its AN/APG-78 longbow radar sits in a small dome above the rotor disc, not in the nose, not on the wings, but directly above the rotor hub. That placement is the entire tactical concept. The Apache can hide behind a ridgeline, a tree line, or a building, exposing only the radar dome above cover. It pops up for around 6 seconds, and the millimeter wave radar scans, classifies up to 256 targets at once, prioritizes the 16 most important, transfers targeting data, and then the helicopter drops back behind cover before the enemy fully understands what happened. Older versions had a detection range of about 8 kilometers. The upgraded version can reach roughly 16 kilometers. Then the data is passed to the AGM-114L Longbow Hellfire. And this is where the technical change completely transforms the way the helicopter fights. Earlier Hellfire variants used laser guidance. The gunner had to keep a laser fixed on the target from launch until impact, which meant remaining exposed above cover for 15 to 20 seconds. During those 15 to 20 seconds, the helicopter had to stay above the ridgeline, visible, tracked, and vulnerable to destruction. The Longbow Hellfire replaced the laser seeker with a millimeter wave radar seeker, essentially a tiny radar built into the missile itself. The pilot fires, then can immediately dive back into cover. The missile finds the target on its own. Exposure time falls from 20 seconds to almost 0. At night, this advantage becomes even more pronounced. The Arrowhead sensor suite gives the weapons officer a FLIR thermal imager, a CCD camera, and a laser designator. The pilot has a separate FLIR sensor slaved to the helmet, so wherever the pilot looks, the sensor looks too. With roughly 10 times the resolution of the older system, the Apache can see in the dark better than almost anything on the ground can see it. The Apache also shares with the A-10 Warthog a distinctly American design philosophy. The aircraft may take hits, but the crew must survive. The airframe is built to keep flying after taking 23mm hits in critical areas, exactly the caliber that inspired the A-10's famous titanium bathtub. But perhaps the most impressive detail is the cockpit glazing. The Apache's canopy is not ordinary glass. It is a multi-layer structure made of high-grade aviation glass bonded with alternating polycarbonate layers. Each layer is designed to absorb part of a bullet's kinetic energy as it penetrates. The first layer cracks and converts part of the projectile's velocity into material failure. The polycarbonate flexes to slow the round. The next glass layer shatters again, absorbing more of the remaining energy. By the time the bullet reaches the final layer, its speed has dropped enough for it to be stopped. This is the same principle of layered energy absorption used in the A-10's titanium bathtub, except here, it is applied to something the pilot must see through. In other words, the Apache pilot sits behind transparent armor capable of stopping small arms fire and fragments that would slice through the windshield of a civilian helicopter almost effortlessly. A single mission also reveals how punishing the economics behind this equation really are. The Apache costs about $10,500 per flight hour. Each Hellfire missile costs roughly $117,000 to $150,000. Meanwhile, every S-300 PMU-2 battery Iran needs to keep an Apache out of its skies may cost more than $300 million per system. Iran poured billions into integrated air defense, yet the platform demonstrating that this money has been reduced to scrap metal costs less per hour to operate than many private business jets. Of course, the sky is not always as empty as it is now. The Apache has already learned the lesson of a miscalculated equation twice, once as the perfect solution and once as the victim. In the early hours of January 17, 1991, at 2:38 a.m., 8 AH-64As and 4 MH-53J pave lows crossed into Iraq at 50 feet in total radio silence. Their mission was to destroy 2 early warning radar sites, opening a 20-mile corridor through which F-117 stealth fighters could penetrate undetected. At the time, the Apache did not yet have GPS. The Pavlos had to navigate and drop infrared chemical lights as markers across the desert. The formation followed those markers through total darkness, flying nap of the earth for more than an hour. As they approached the target, the call went out. 10 minutes to target. Hellfires, Hydra 70 rockets, and 30mm chain guns opened fire. Both radar sites were completely destroyed. 100% mission success. No losses. Just 22 minutes before H-hour, the corridor was open. The F-117s passed through. Operation Desert Storm began. Task Force Normandy did not create air superiority by itself, but it opened the door. It gouged out the eyes of Iraq's air defense network so that stealth fighters, Tomahawks, and Wild Weasel units could pour through and destroy the rest systematically. Without Normandy, that corridor does not exist. Without that corridor, the air campaign cannot begin on schedule. The Apache was the first weapon to fire in Desert Storm. That was not a side note. It was doctrine. Now, fast forward 12 years to March 24, 2003. 31 AH-64Ds launched for a deep attack against Republican Guard positions near Karbala, Iraq. This was classic Cold War doctrine. Large helicopter formations operating independently deep behind enemy lines. But Iraqi signals intelligence intercepted cell phone calls and used them to trace the formation's approach route. Power in the city suddenly went dark. A coordinated signal was sent, and then everything opened fire at once. Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft guns, S-60 guns, RPGs, and small arms from rooftops, windows, and alleyways all fired upward simultaneously. Chief Warrant Officers David Williams and Ronald Young were shot down and captured, later appearing on Iraqi television. The other 29 helicopters limped home riddled with holes, many barely flyable. Karbala did not merely teach the U.S. Army that helicopters need air defense suppression. It forced a doctrinal shift. The entire idea of large-scale, independent, deep-attack helicopter formations a Cold War inheritance, was abandoned after 2003. From that point on, the Apache was no longer a lone raider. It became one link in a synchronized system. Intelligence prepared the battlefield. Artillery suppressed threats before the helicopters arrived. Electronic warfare blinded the enemy, and fixed-wing aircraft operated overhead. Same airframe, same laws of physics, different equation. Karbala proved that even basic air defenses, machine guns, anti-aircraft artillery, or coordinated infantry fire are enough to destroy a helicopter's survival margin if its approach route is predictable and there is no suppression to support it. The Apache flying over Iran today is not the Apache that flew into Karbala, even if its aerodynamics remain the same. What changed is the doctrine, the way the survival equation is calculated. 3 moments, 1 helicopter, 3 different conclusions, all determined by the same variable. In 1991, the Apache flew into defended airspace because it had to. It was the breachmaker, the only platform capable of destroying those radar sites at low altitude, at night, and with the necessary precision. The risk was accepted because there was no alternative, and the equation paid off. No losses. In 2003, the Apache flew into defended airspace because doctrine claimed it could. The result was near disaster. Doctrine was wrong. The equation did not produce a return. 1 aircraft lost, 31 damaged, and an entire operational concept buried. By 2026, the Apache flies freely because the defense system is gone. It is no longer the breachmaker. It is the sentence being read aloud. The equation is profitable only because the threat side has been reduced to 0. Not by the Apache itself, but by everything that happened before it arrived. The meaning of that extends beyond the sky. Army Apaches are now operating from Navy sea-based expeditionary platforms in the Persian Gulf. Army helicopters are launching from Navy ships to strike coastal positions around the Strait of Hormuz. You do not build that level of joint complexity, coordinate across service branches, and operate helicopters from naval platforms at the tactical level unless you are genuinely convinced the air threat is gone. The logistics alone would be impossible to justify if even one radar-guided SAM system still had the ability to reach that floating base. In biology, there is a fascinating concept called an indicator species. An organism so sensitive that if it is thriving, it proves the surrounding environment has become healthy. When pollution disappears, that species returns. It did not clean the water itself, but its presence proves the water is already clean. The Apache is the indicator species of air superiority. It cannot survive against radar-guided surface-to-air missiles. It also cannot survive long against coordinated anti-aircraft fire or dense ground fire. Its safety margin against concentrated defensive fire is measured in seconds, not minutes. So, when you see it flying freely, actively hunting targets instead of crouching behind cover, that means the real predators are gone. Not hiding, not waiting. Gone. Still, this story comes with a sober reminder. Iran's integrated air defense network is centralized, fixed, and relatively brittle. Exactly the kind of target dead campaigns were designed to break. The next opponent may not look like that. They may field mobile SAM systems that relocate every 20 minutes, layered defense in depth, forces that can continue fighting after losing central command nodes, and redundant systems designed specifically to survive the kind of campaign that broke Iran. And the Apache fleet is no longer young. The AH-64E Guardian is an upgrade, not a completely new airframe. Many Apaches in service today trace their structural origins back to the late 1980s and have already flown combat missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Every flight hour over Iran adds more fatigue cycles to joints and fuselage beams that have already absorbed combat stress for more than 3 decades. The same platform, now proving the air war has been decided, is also aging with every sortie used to prove it. And if an indicator species, like the Apache, flies into a battlefield where the threat ecosystem has not truly been broken, the question will be simple. Does it come home? Or does it relearn the lesson Karbala taught 23 years ago? The next time you see footage of a helicopter flying freely over a war zone, you will understand what that really means. The Apache is not over Iran because it is the most advanced aircraft there. It is not. It is not there because it is the fastest. At 164 knots, it is almost the slowest thing in the battle space. And it certainly is not there because it is invisible, because in reality it is one of the easiest combat platforms the United States possesses to detect. It is flying only because it is the most vulnerable thing there, and its very presence in the sky is the strongest statement this equation can make. There is nothing left capable of shooting it down. In 1991, the Apache opened a war by destroying radar. In 2026, the Apache confirms that war has already been decided by flying through the place where radar once existed. That said, one important point still needs to be made clearly. Infrared-guided man-pads likely still exist in the area. That type of threat can survive almost any air campaign. But the Apache carries CIRCM, a laser-based countermeasure designed specifically to defeat that class of missile. Radar-guided systems, however, the kind that can track targets from 88,000 feet, network with one another, and create layered kill zones, have largely reached the end of their story. The Apache is not the thing that won the air war. It is the proof that someone else already finished the job. At roughly $10,500 per flight hour, the Apache is now doing something very simple and very bitter, proving that billions of dollars in air defense can be turned into scrap metal.